and I'm here to bring you some amazing speakers that we have here today. We have Dr. Forgy as well as Casey here from Nova Southeastern University. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a little bit. I want you all to take note of this raffle that we have going on during the webinar. I will be putting all of this information in the chat for you guys so that you can have a chance to win the swag bag as well as a $25 gift card from Nova Southeastern for you being here and participating in this webinar today. Please be sure to respond to the text with your first and last name so I know who I'm talking to when I do choose the winner. When our cycle thing chooses the winner. So go ahead and text the word NSU to 954-800-6961 to win the raffle. We have amazing webinars coming up, everybody. I don't want anyone to get overwhelmed, but I do need to, sorry about that, highlight all these great events that we have. Tomorrow we'll be having a panel with Drea. All of these are at 11 a.m. They're all free. They're all on Zoom. We do have Get Fundable this week. Next week, we will have Synergy Title. This is actually not Nova. This is Nova Today. Sorry, this is BPM RIA. We're actually hosting this one, not Nova, and How to Virtual Wholesale. And this is Florida Entrepreneur Law, all coming next week. And then Drea and Get Fundable this week, tomorrow and Thursday. You can find all these events on the website on bpmria.com/upcoming events. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat so you guys can register for all of these at once, and then Zoom will give you the link to come to join for the webinar. So you don't even have to think about it twice. Zoom will always remind you about a day, a week. It'll give you all the heads up an hour before when our webinar starts. So go ahead and register for those online. They're all free, all on Zoom, all really, really good. You'll get more details on all of these on the website. And the link is in the chat. All right, so my favorite way to get alerts about our events is obviously text message. I get a lot of calls, I get a lot of emails. I prefer text, short, sweet, to the point. This is the easiest way, if you ask me, to keep up with our events. Text the word BPM RIA to our event line, 954-800-6961. Once again, I'm running a little bit fast here, but this will all be in the chat for everybody to refer to. We also, here it is, the Bootcamp Quick Start. This has got me super hyped because we've never run our quick start for this special price. We want everybody to have access to this information. We have 4 amazing speakers that will be speaking at this event. It is on Zoom. It is not like a webinar. It is like a meeting. We're doing face-to-face, cameras on, mics on. We're participating. We're meeting with other people in the quick start. We'll have a bunch of different people in here, but you will get more information on the quick start website that I just threw in the chat. So go ahead and check that out. If you have any questions about it, just go ahead and call the office after the webinar, and I'll get you more information on that. I actually do have a poll for anybody who's interested in the quick start. This is just easier. If you go ahead and answer the poll, I'll just go ahead and give you a call after this webinar. So you might have answered a poll before. I may or may not have gone back to you. We're running this special right now, so it's a little bit crazy. I'm getting a lot of responses on these polls. I'm getting a lot of calls and a lot of people wanting more information about it. So go ahead and respond to the poll so I can just give you a call back and clear up any questions you might have about the quick start. And we'll just go ahead and address that right away. So go ahead and reply to the poll and I'll call you. And again, you're going to want to get your ticket now because $197 is a huge steal for 2-day, full-day training run by our CEO, Anish Dave. Alrighty. So we do have memberships to the association, gets you into the in-person networking meetings for free. We just had an in-person networking event last Wednesday, almost 200 people. It was amazing. It was awesome. I have 20 corporate vendors there for the networking portion. And then I have a huge educational portion by Anthony Chara, how to get started in apartment investing. He is coming back for an all-day workshop on April 23rd. You can find more information about that on our website. You do get special discounts to all-day workshops such as that one. And you do get the amazing National REIA benefit package, which includes amazing discounts to Office Depot, Home Depot, Arcana Insurance, much, much more. So if you have any questions about what a membership can do for you and how it can basically pay for itself, if you're using it, go ahead and respond to the poll. I'll give you a call. If you want to check more information out, you can always go to the website. I'll throw the link in the chat. And don't hesitate to call the office as well. Thank you guys so much for answering the polls. I appreciate that. So many of you do know, and many people on here are part of the one-on-one coaching and training programs that we have available. We have 2 programs available. We do put up 100% of the money for our students' deals. I know this is almost unheard of. I mean, I have not heard of another mentoring program that is one-on-one and puts up money for deals. We do make 50-50 split with our students. We do help them get the ball rolling for their business in real estate investing. We do teach them our strategies and things that work for us and what we know works. So if you're interested in, maybe, I don't know if this is even giving you an inkling of interest, go ahead and book the 15-minute, I have a 15-minute call available on the website on bpmrea.com. If you book that discovery call, it'll be a quick 15-minute call with me just to give you more information, not forcing anybody to sign up here. This is just to get an idea of what we're doing and what's been working for us and working for our students. And then if you are interested, I would be more than happy to set up a one-on-one call with you and our CEO to see if this is possibly a good fit for you, a good partnership. It starts with a conversation. So go ahead and book the call on the website. I will put a poll in here to make it easy, or I did put the poll in here to make it easy for you guys. Respond to the poll, give you a call back after this webinar. I know many of you have maybe already answered this poll and I've called you or maybe not gotten to you. I do have a lot of people that I am reaching out and trying to get to all those polls as much as I can. I'm doing my best. So go ahead and answer this poll today if you're interested in just hearing a little bit more about it, and we will be in touch. So thank you guys for listening. We always want to thank our sponsors. We are the only chapter with National REIA in South Florida. So it's a big deal. We meet compliance with them yearly. We don't take that lightly. We always want to thank them for all the great things that they do give us and all the amazing people that they connect us with. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our amazing speakers today. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Casey, do you want to go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then after I'm, I guess, done, then you can kind of, I guess, talk a little bit about the program, that sort of thing.
Sure, absolutely. So good afternoon. I'm sorry, good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Casey Seidman. I'm an assistant director of graduate admissions at Nova Southeastern University's Huizenga College of Business. Go Sharks. So a little bit about myself. I've been here about 7 years, and I represent the MSRED program, the MSPNP program, the MPA program, and the one-year MBA program. But the MSRED program is actually a wonderful opportunity for everybody on this call because it gives you a chance to really understand not just about property, but how to build something commercially viable from the ground up. And we go through all that, and I look forward to talking to you about the admission process.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. And what I want to make sure that everybody is aware of, both this document that I'm sharing my screen and then also a Excel spreadsheet, we will be sending to you at the conclusion of the meeting today. So don't feel that you've got to try to write everything down and remember everything. Hopefully, you can just kind of refer to this after your session with us. So first of all, I'm Fred Forgy. I serve as the chair and the director for our Terry W. Stiles School of Real Estate Development, which houses our, as Casey mentioned, our Master of Science in Real Estate Development, which focuses pretty much on all aspects of the real estate development process of everything from acquiring raw land to getting regulatory approvals, to performing market analyses, site analysis, construction management, and financing the project, ultimately getting it marketed and occupied and or sold, depending on the product type. So what we're going to do today is a very, very small piece of that, which is kind of a very fundamental sort of introduction to commercial real estate financing, which is very different than residential financing. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through kind of a very basic sort of case study and work through a few calculations and kind of explain things as we go along. If you've got questions, we'll try to get to those maybe after I've kind of gotten a little deeper into it, and we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have. So as we had kind of advertised, we're focusing on the fundamentals of the financing commercial real estate, but specifically we're looking at some of the different things that are used by lenders whenever determining to make the loan, and how much of a loan that they will potentially make and what other sort of restrictions they may place upon you. But more specifically, what are some of the kind of, whether it's hidden cost or certainly additional cost that you may incur whenever getting a commercial loan that you may or may not see with a traditional residential loan. So some of the things that we're going to go over specifically are what is a loan to value ratio, debt service coverage ratio, talk a little bit about loan points, origination fees, prepayment penalties, loan servicing, administrative fees, and then lastly, kind of the calculation of a lender's yield or what a borrower's true effective cost is of obtaining a particular type of loan. And as I mentioned, you'll be getting this particular document as a Word document, along with a spreadsheet that will do a lot of these calculations for you. And I'll be going over that as well as we kind of get a little deeper into this. Okay, so as I tend to do, I like to use sort of case studies because I think that's a good way to kind of explain the concepts as we sort of go along, and people can kind of hopefully relate to the concepts a little bit more as we are explaining those. So here's the scenario. You've got the opportunity to buy a small 5,000 square foot commercial building, and it's priced at around $1 million. Now, I purposely chose $1 million and 5,000 square feet, just as nice ballpark numbers from the standpoint that they're kind of easy to relate to, instead of giving you very precise dollar amounts and very precise sort of square feet in an actual building. I think you're gonna understand the concept, and you'll be able to obviously adjust it as you need to with different size properties and dollar amounts and that sort of thing. So but in this particular case, this property is going to be generating annual rental income of $40 per square foot per year. Okay, now what that means, and this is a little bit different than residential. In the residential market, rents are typically quoted on a monthly basis. Okay, you're going to pay whatever, $1,000 a month for an apartment, or $2,000, $3,000, whatever. We easily relate to that. But in commercial real estate, rental rates are typically quoted on an annual basis, on a per square foot basis. Okay, now you can always convert it into a monthly amount and for the space, but most of the time this is the way that it is communicated. All right, so in this particular case, what we would be doing to calculate that annual rental income, and I'll show you the calculation down here below in just a second, is you're going to take the 5,000 square feet, multiply it by $40 per square foot. That means that your annual income for the property would be $200,000. Okay, so it's kind of, I'm going to scroll down, but I'll scroll back up here in a second, just so you can kind of see what's going on. So this first line here, what we call potential gross income, of $200,000, that is that 5,000 square feet multiplied by the $40 per square foot in rent. Okay, so in that case, $200,000 is the dollar amount. Now, if you wanted, as I was saying earlier, to kind of figure out, well, what is that on a monthly basis for this property? Then you would just simply take that $200,000 amount and put that into your calculator and say, okay, 200,000 is what it is per year. What would that be per month? So divided by 12, so about $16,000 a month, okay, is what you're looking at for this particular space, okay? And this could be potentially a retail space, could be an office space. And once again, the rental rates are going to depend on obviously what the current prevailing rates are, in the market. I'm sure that many of you have certainly been paying attention to what's been happening in South Florida with rental rates on residential properties and how those have escalated dramatically over just this past year. And in some cases, more than doubling or even more in some instances. So, things change and things change rapidly, especially in this kind of a market. But we'll kind of get back to this particular case study here for a second. Okay, so that gets us our potential gross income. So let me kind of go back up here to our assumptions. All right, so our next assumption here is we're expected to have a vacancy rate of 10%, okay, of potential gross income. Now this vacancy rate would be, it may take some time to get the property leased up. We may have a situation of where the tenant moves out maybe in mid-year, and we've got to once again get it released, get it ready for being released. It could also be that this particular tenant or tenants that are occupying the space are not able to pay their rent, which would be more of what we would call a collection loss instead of just a vacancy. But suffice it to say, in this particular instance, we're simply going to say that we have a 10% vacancy rate based on the potential gross income. So kind of scrolling back here for a second, down below, so you can see what I'm referring to. We have vacancy and collection losses here, which are going to be taking the 200,000 potential gross income, multiplying it by 10%. That gives us then 20,000 that we would be subtracting from the overall potential gross income. Okay. All right. It looks like someone has been raising their hand. Miss Anderson, I'm trying to see, is there a way for us to, Alexa, is there a way for us to see what her question is?
Well, I did not tell everybody the housekeeping rules. The housekeeping rules, everyone, please enter your questions in the Q&A section down below. So we're not sure, Miss Anderson, if you do have a question, but if you do, oh, it was an accident, no biggie. Everybody, if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section. We will be keeping an eye on all your questions and address them at the right time. So thank you, everybody.
No problem. All right. So kind of going back to our set of assumptions here for a second. So as we said, we've got the 10% vacancy, but then we also have other income of $5,000 per year. And depending on the kind of property it is, these are usually like miscellaneous revenues, and could be things like vending machines, parking fees, whatever else that may be non-traditional sort of rental income that the property is generating over the course of the year. And so we like to separate that out into just a kind of another category that we call other income. All right. And so kind of once again, just to sort of show where that is flowing here. So the other income of the $5,000 is added. So you can sort of see here the formula for other income is simply that annual income from these miscellaneous items is placed there. And then what we do is we calculate what is called our effective gross income, which is basically how much real money do you have coming in the door off the property over the course of the year. And the formula for that is simply over here, the potential gross income minus the vacancy and collection losses and then adding in the other income. All right, so all of these numbers are really important to kind of get a sense of what's really happening with the property with respect to the revenue side. And we're gonna get now over to the expense side of the property. All right, so kind of going back up here. All right, so in this particular instance, we are expecting that the property is going to have some sort of expenses that are going to be covered by the owner of the property. Now, depending on the type of lease that you have in place on your commercial property, you could have a gross lease, which would be in a situation of where it's all bills paid by the landlord. And under those circumstances, virtually all the operating expenses are going to be covered by the property owner, by the landlord. But on the total opposite end of the spectrum, you could have what's called an absolute triple net lease. And under those circumstances, the tenant is the one that is responsible for paying everything. And when I say everything, I mean property taxes, I mean insurance, I mean maintenance, repairs. And the best examples of absolute triple net leases are typically box tenants, especially pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS, that sort of thing. They typically initially maybe develop their own building, they buy the land, develop the building, but then they do what's called a sale leaseback, where they sell it off to an investor and then lease it back for them for a fixed dollar amount in rent. But they also hold on to the responsibility of paying for any and all operating expenses associated with the property. So you can have, once again, that full cross section of who pays for what and under what circumstances. So whenever you see a commercial property that's up for lease, it's always important to take a look and see what type of lease it is, whether it is some form of a gross lease or some form of a net lease, and who is responsible for what expenses. And in our little case example, certainly some of the expenses are going to be borne for this property by the owner. And we are simply saying, it's going to be roughly 35% of the property's overall potential gross income. So what we're going to do, if you sort of take a look down here below, we have the EGI, as we just talked about, but then we subtract out from that this total operating expenses. And so here what we're doing is we are taking that 200,000 PGI from up here, and we are multiplying it by 0.35 or 35% as an expense percentage. And that leaves us with basically $70,000 a year that would be paid for by the property owner. Now, this doesn't say anything about what the tenant may pay. This is simply from the owner's perspective, what they are going to be responsible for. Okay. Then from there, the next calculation is a big one, and that's getting to our net operating income, or our NOI, which this is basically revenue minus expenses get us to NOI. And in this case, all we're doing is we're taking our effective gross income, subtracting out our total operating expenses. That leaves us with NOI. Now, that number, that NOI number, gets used a lot by lenders in the sense of that's the real revenue minus expenses. And the lender sort of says, okay, that's the money you have sort of left over, if you will, to be able to pay a loan or pay the mortgage on a loan. And so many of the decisions that the lender makes is going to be based off of that number. So it's important to make sure that number is accurate. And also to sort of point out, the lender's probably not going to completely trust whatever number that you may give them based on these calculations. They're going to want to see the rent rolls. They're going to want to see the operating expenses itemized out. They're going to want to take a look at other sort of similar properties and kind of get a sense for how they're performing in terms of revenue and expenses relative to your property. and look for sort of commonalities and look for differences. And based on that, that will give them some assurance or not, in terms of establishing what that NOI number is. And so normally, that process of kind of going through that sort of due diligence on the part of the lender, people call it different things, but as I say, we call it due diligence. Sometimes we call it the lender's haircut, because the lender kind of goes through and sort of slices a little bit off of the revenue to be more conservative, and maybe adds a few things to the expenses, and just to make sure that the number is as accurate as, hopefully, and conservative as what it can be. All right. So from that is ultimately kind of where the loan amount usually comes from. So let's kind of go back up here. All right. And so what we're basically being told is the lender is willing to provide a mortgage on the property for $800,000. Now, if you remember, let's kind of go back up to the beginning here. The property's overall value or cost is $1 million. So if they're willing to give you a loan of $800,000, that basically translates into an 80% loan to value ratio. Now, for commercial properties, that number, that loan to value ratio number, will change and has changed over time. It will go up, it will go down, kind of depending on the current prevailing winds in the market, as to how sort of stable and secure lenders feel about the current values of commercial properties. And so I've seen, in the worst of times, that number maybe be as low as 50%, meaning they're only willing to loan you, half of what the project cost. But I've also seen, in the best of circumstances, with certain property types, they may lend you up to 90 or 95% of the value. But the standard normal kind of go-to number has traditionally been around 80% loan to value. Okay. And so all you're really doing is just, once again, kind of taking whatever the purchase price or the valuation of the property is and multiply it by whatever that particular lender's loan to value ratio requirement is. Now, this is also another good point to kind of interject here, that not all lenders are created equal. Okay. Just like you go to different retailers to get different goods and services, you may go to Walmart for some things, maybe go to Target for some things, you may go to Macy's for something else, and so forth, so on. Well, lenders are retailers as well. And so it's not going to be the case that you're going to get the absolute best deal from one particular lender versus another. You have to, in other words, go shopping, if you will, for different loan products that are sort of out there and available. And we're going to kind of get into what some of those differences may be, but it's not just the stated interest rate on a loan. That's probably the biggest mistake that people make whenever looking for commercial real estate loans, is they focus too much of their energy on whatever the stated rate of the interest rate is on the loan. And you'll see what I'm talking about whenever we go through this example. But kind of getting back to this particular circumstance, so this 80% loan to value ratio, what that would mean is, once again, you're getting a loan for $800,000, but then you have to provide a down payment, or what we're going to call equity, of $200,000. All right. So that's going to be the money that you're going to have to come up with, either yourself or from other equity partners that you may bring into the deal. And how you choose to structure that, that's a topic for another day, in terms of deal structuring and kind of how much does someone contribute, under what circumstances do they get paid out, how much do they get paid out, what sort of rate of return are they going to potentially be obligated to receive, all those kinds of issues. That's once again a much more advanced issue. Okay, so for our particular project here, I've kept it very basic just so the math doesn't get complicated. And we're going to have a loan that's going to be an interest-only loan. Okay, so what that means is this is going to be a loan where there's no principal repayment over the life of the loan. So in essence, the way an interest-only mortgage works is the dollar amount that you borrow, in this case, 800,000, for however long you borrow that money, you're never going to pay down that 800,000 until you close the loan out, whenever you more than likely sell the property, or you have some additional cash that you want to pay down that loan. Now, one of the advantages of the interest-only loan is that your mortgage payment is smaller, but one of the big downsides is you aren't really paying off any of the property's underlying value. And as a result, 5 years into the loan, 10 years into the loan, 15 years into the loan, you haven't paid anything down on the loan. While it's very attractive to try to get that low payment, it can be a real problem, especially if the property doesn't continue to go up in value. But having just said that, the Excel example that I'm going to provide you does actually use a more traditional loan, a fully amortizing loan that will pay off the balance after whatever that loan term is. And we'll get into that here a little bit later. Okay, so moving down again and looking at, in this case, what we're going to call annual debt service. So that is, in this particular case, our annualized mortgage payment. Okay, for this interest-only loan, that's basically just saying, okay, take that $800,000 that we've borrowed and multiply it by the face value of the interest rate, which is 5%. Okay, so that means that our annual debt service is going to be $40,000. But as I just mentioned, that number, that 40,000, doesn't include any payback of principal. That's just the interest piece. Okay. Now, if we kind of continue on, and I'm going to kind of come back to this in a second, but if we subtract out that annual debt service, then that leaves us with what we call before tax cash flow of $75,000. And that's the money that we would then have available on a before tax basis to distribute to ourselves and to any sort of equity partners that we might have in this particular deal. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully it does. All right. Now, we're going to go back up here to the annual debt service. So we got another sort of extended discussion on this. All right. So one of the other criteria, in addition to the loan to value ratio that a lender uses, is called the debt service coverage ratio. Sometimes they'll also call it just a debt coverage ratio, okay, to kind of shorten it up a little bit, but it's the same thing. And all this is a calculation to ensure, from the lender's perspective, to ensure that the lender is going to get paid back. That's all they really care about. They want to make sure that they're going to get their money back in terms of whatever they have lent you. And so what they want to make certain of is that there's more than enough income that the property is generating on an annual basis in terms of NOI in order to service the annual debt on the property, okay, or the annual debt service in terms of interest and potentially principal, okay? So the formula that is used for this debt service coverage ratio is simply taking your net operating income divided by your annual debt service. Well, now, if you look at our particular property, that's 115,000 divided by 40,000. Let's just kind of go back down here and you'll see the numbers here again. So NOI, 115,000, annual debt service, 40,000. So all we're doing is we're taking and dividing the 115,000 by 40,000, and that gives us a debt service coverage ratio of 2.875. Now, what does that mean? That means that we've got basically more than 2.8 times what we need in income to service our existing debt. So in other words, because we've got $115,000, we're only spending 40,000 of that on the debt. So we've got more than enough coverage, if you will, of our debt by our net operating income. All right. Now, normally a lender, they will have a number that is preset by them. And this number also changes over time, depending on the characteristics of the market. So what I've done is set it at about 1.4, which is a reasonably normal number. I mean, I've seen it as low as 1.15. I've seen it as high as like 1.6, 1.7. So, once again, depends on property type, depends on the strength, characteristics of the market. So a lot of things kind of go into that, but that's a number that's set by the lender. Well, excuse me, the higher this number is from your perspective relative to what the requirement is, the better. So in other words, because our actual debt service coverage ratio is 2.875 and their required debt service coverage ratio is 1.4, that is wonderful. That is great for us because we more than far exceed what their requirement is. Okay. So that's a good thing for us in terms of the borrower. However, and this is sort of the next statement, this is where we get a little bit more realistic. Most loans are not going to be interest only and are going to require some sort of a principal repayment as part of that annual debt service. Now, the reason I didn't do this in this example was to keep the math simple, so you just kind of could sort of see very easily what's going on without having to use the financial calculator or having to use Excel, that sort of thing. So that's the reason I kind of oversimplified it a little bit. But let's just say that we took that same loan of $800,000 with the 5% interest rate, with monthly payments for a 15-year term, where it is fully amortized or paid off by the end of the 15 years, then that means that the monthly mortgage payment would actually be $6,300 a month, or an annual payment of about $75,000. Now that's, if you take note, that's significantly higher than the $40,000 we have up here, because the $40,000, if you keep in mind, is only the interest piece, okay, of the loan, whereas the $75,000 includes paying back part of the principal each month, each year. And so, but over the course of the 15-year loan term, at the end of 15 years, you have fully paid off the mortgage. So that's the reason why the number is much higher. Now, given that that is probably more realistic, then, as a sort of debt service coverage or annual debt service, then I went back and recalculated the debt service coverage ratio. And so instead of it really being a 2.875 with this type of a loan with a fully amortizing mortgage, it's only a 1.51. But that's still good enough because the lender's requirement is a 1.4. So we're still above what they require. So still a great thing. So we can be, very happy about that. That's still good for us as a borrower. Okay. Now, let's kind of go a little further down. All right. So this is probably a good place to kind of stop and take a few questions before we kind of get into the next piece, which is to talk about loan points, prepayment penalties, that sort of thing. So I'm going to take a look here at the chat.
Right, we have one in the chat, one in the Q&A so far. I see in the Q&A, BTCF. What does that stand for, the meaning?
Before tax cash flow is what BTF stands for. And that is simply the amount of income or cash flow that you have available to you as the owner of the property on a before tax basis. So before you pay your income tax, not property tax, but income tax, that would be the number. Now, it looks like further down, Jose, doesn't the DSCR also take the taxes and insurance into account? Yeah, that is part of the operating expense piece. So that total operating expense line item there, part of that number of that 70,000 would be property taxes and property insurance if we are paying for them as the owner of the property. But as I discussed, it's very possible you can pass those expenses directly on to the tenants and have them pay them out of their pocket, and you would not be responsible for those. Okay. How often do you see a lease payment assigned directly to a lender? Happens, believe it or not, quite often. This is one of the ways that a lender can protect themselves, so that in essence, the tenant is sort of called a lockbox requirement. I mean, and some lenders maybe call it different things, but I've always referred to it as a lockbox requirement. And what that means is the tenant would write a check. It may be made payable to you as the owner of the property, but it's sent to the lender to like a PO box or a lockbox. The lender would then take that check out, would deposit it into your account, but immediately remove their mortgage payment from that rent payment in order to ensure that they get paid first before any other expenses potentially get paid. Okay. All right. And does that take care of all the questions?
I think that we should keep on going. Everybody keep on putting those questions. Try to keep them in the Q&A section. We are being super vigilant on the chat, but your question is safe in the Q&A section, so it doesn't get lost in the chat with all the other comments and things populating. So I say we keep rocking and
All right,
rolling.
so let's move forward. Okay, so that kind of gets us to the point of, okay, the lenders, willing to make you this loan, this 5% interest rate, but usually there are a few other items that the lender utilizes to sort of bump up, if you will, their rate of return or their yield. And on the front end of a loan, you have what are called loan points or loan origination fees. Okay, and so this is where a lender can choose to sort of, in essence, say, hey, you're getting a loan from us for $800,000. Yeah, we're going to be making money off of the interest that we're charging you, but we would also like to make a little money off of you on the front end of the loan by going through all of the processes that we have to go through internally within our lending institution to make this loan happen. All the paperwork, all of their underwriting, due diligence, that sort of thing. And once again, every lender is different, okay, as to what these fees and charges may be. There are some lenders where they're not going to be any of these fees. Other lenders, they're going to be super bulked up on these, okay? And because if you remember what I was saying, many people get attracted to what appears to be a very low interest rate loan, only to find out that kind of once you're in there and you're about ready to sign the paperwork, oh, hey, what are all these loan origination fees? And ultimately can be a lot more than you were expecting. So in this particular case, we're going to make the assumption that the lender is going to charge a 3% loan origination fee on this $800,000 loan. So what that means is the lender is basically going to charge you 3% of that $800,000 or $24,000 up front to actually make that loan. Okay. And I'm not going to get into all of the, I mean, I can, but I don't know that we need to in this sort of a session, all the intricate details of how that works. But suffice it to say, it's kind of like you're borrowing $800,000 from the lender, and then you're in essence really writing them a check for $24,000 for the loan origination fees. So net, you're only receiving like $776,000. But it's not quite like that, but to a certain extent, it really sort of is. But we'll talk more about that if you have questions. Okay. Then the next piece are prepayment penalties. Okay. And these can get really nasty on commercial loans. Once again, totally dependent on the kind of lender and what their policies are. Some lenders actually have what are called lockout provisions in their commercial loans, meaning that you are not able to prepay a loan before it comes due. And then even once that lockout period may expire, after maybe a couple of years, whatever it might be, then you still are going to have this prepayment penalty that's going to almost always be based on whatever the loan balance is at the time that you prepay. And so this could be, once again, a pretty substantial dollar amount. And you're saying, well, why does a lender charge a prepayment? Don't they want their money back? Well, think about it from this perspective. If you pay off a loan early, you're basically precluding the lender from collecting all of that sort of interest on the future payments of the mortgage over the remaining loan term. And there are certain types of lenders, especially those commercial loans that get sold off into commercial mortgage-backed securities, CMBS. Some of those will require even a more drastic sort of prepayment penalty than just a simple calculation off of the loan balance. Sometimes they will have what is called a yield maintenance requirement, which is, in essence, you end up prepaying most, if not all, of the interest that you would have had to pay on the loan for the remaining duration of the loan. So it can get really nasty in terms of what those fees and charges may very well be. But suffice it to say, it's another way for a lender to, in essence, kind of offer you this wonderful deal with potentially this very low stated interest rate, but then get you on the back end with respect to these additional prepayment penalty fees. So in this case, we're going to assume that the penalty is going to be 4% of the outstanding mortgage balance. So in this case, given that we have this interest-only mortgage, that would equate to, we still owe $800,000 because we don't pay down anything regardless of when we may choose to prepay it, if it's before the end of the 15 years. So multiplying the 800,000 times 4% prepayment penalty, that would be a $32,000 prepayment penalty that would get taken out of any sort of sale price that you may have to pay back the lender that amount as well. Okay. So just keep that into perspective, that paying off the loan early is not always a good deal. All right. Then finally, and this is another one that really gets people sometimes, are loan servicing fees or administrative fees. And I have seen some really wacky things here with commercial loans. So this is a way for a lender to make money during the loan. So if you think about it, you sort of compartmentalize the loan into 3 different phases. The beginning of the loan, they make money off of loan origination fees. During the loan, they're going to make money off of servicing and administrative fees, along with whatever they're earning on the interest rate. And then at the tail end of the loan, they're going to make money off of a prepayment penalty if you pay it off early. So they literally are finding every possible way to, in essence, charge you additional fees during the life, if you will, of that commercial loan. All right. So in this particular case, and you're saying, well, what does that fee even go toward? Like, and we're saying this one's gonna be, let's say, $100 a month or $1,200 a year, $100 a month times 12, $1,200 a year. This would be, and it could be, and I know you're gonna think this sounds crazy, but it may be the lender is saying, okay, that's the fee that I'm going to charge you for literally walking down to the PO box, getting the lease payment check from your tenant, going through all of the opening up the envelope and entering it into our system and recording it for payment and that sort of thing. It may also include fees that would be to pay for property taxes, maybe insurance payments, any other sort of requirements that the lender may be doing on your behalf. they're going to charge you some sort of servicing fee to kind of handle all that, if you will, on your behalf. Okay. Now, the last little piece of this, before we get into the actual spreadsheet, is what we're going to call the calculation of the lender's yield and effective cost of borrowing. And so this is the way of looking at all of those fees and charges that are assessed by the lender over the life of the loan to really find out what is your true total cost of borrowing expressed as a percentage interest rate. So as I put here, in essence, this involves taking that base interest rate of 5%, excuse me, and then adding in the cost of the loan origination fees at the beginning of the loan, adding in the servicing and administrative fees during the middle of the loan, and the prepayment penalty fees at the end of the loan if it's prepaid, okay? And so the bottom line to all of this is that beyond that base stated interest rate, there are so many other fees, charges, expenses that you've got to consider whenever choosing a lender for a commercial real estate loan. Okay, so what we're going to do before we jump into the spreadsheet is I'm going to look over here at the chat, and we're going to see if we've got any new questions. Not
I think
seeing.
we're good right now. We'll
Okay.
keep on trucking.
Okay, all right.
Keep putting
so
those questions, guys.
let me stop share and reshare the spreadsheets. Okay, and once again, for those of you that may have joined a few minutes late, we are providing you with a copy of both the Word document that I went through, and then now this very basic sort of spreadsheet that kind of helps you to calculate some of these costs for a loan. All right, so this spreadsheet, what it does is it allows you here to put in the loan amount, which I've done, of 800,000, put in the interest rate, in this case of 5%, put in the loan term in years for 15 years. Then it automatically calculates what your monthly payment on that loan is going to be, and also what the annual payment would be. So you can kind of refer to those numbers back on the other sheet that you're going to have and play around with that. Then it also allows you to pop in what are the loan origination fees and as a percent of the loan amount. So you put that in 3%, as we put on the other. What are the monthly administrative fees? In this case, the $100 a month. And then finally, the prepayment penalty fees of 4% of the outstanding loan balance. And then we're going to make the assumption in this particular case that this loan is going to be prepaid after month 36, which would be basically 3 years into the mortgage. You're saying, well, why would you prepay it after 3 years? Well, maybe market conditions have changed so much that the value of your property has absolutely ballooned, and you're saying, hey, I want to cash out of this thing. I'm worried the market might crash. And so I'm willing to sort of pay all those penalties to be able to do that, because I don't want to lose, obviously, the underlying value of the property. So that's one way to potentially look at it. Now, what the spreadsheet does behind the scenes is it goes through and it takes a look at what all of your payments were, how much principal was repaid, interest paid, but also, you know, what the interest rate was on the loan, what those upfront fees are, the servicing fees, the prepayment penalty, and then calculates then what the lender's yield is. Now, here's the way to look at this. The lender is advertising a loan that's a 5% stated interest rate. Okay, so that's that's what you see. They have that posted. Or you just ask them, what's the interest rate on the loan? They say 5%. All of these other fees and charges basically transform that 5% stated interest rate loan into really, it's closer to 7.5%. Okay, So another way to look at this is, let's say that there's another lender that what they're advertising is, I don't know, 6.5%. Then, but that loan maybe has no upfront fees, no administrative fees, no back-end prepayment penalty fees. Under those circumstances, that loan would be a much better deal than what this loan is. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense in the context of trying to compare different loans to one another. Now, let's just say that we kind of go back up and we change some of these assumptions. So on the loan origination fees, let's say that we change that to 0. All right, well, look at what the effect is. Just changing that one thing drops it down to 6.2%. Okay, let's say that we get rid of the monthly administrative fees. Doesn't drop it a lot, but down to 6.11. All right, but the prepayment penalty fees, let's say we make that 0%. Lo and behold, now what we're saying is, okay, we can still prepay the loan in month 36 or into 3 years, but because there are no prepayment penalties and there are no loan origination fees and no monthly servicing fees, our actual cost of borrowing is what we thought it was, which was 5%, not with all of these other sort of fees and charges kind of thrown in there. So that's the beauty of this little model, is to be able to kind of change whatever those assumptions are and then see in real time how that would affect your overall cost of borrowing on your project. Now, another thing that this particular little model will do is it also can account for adjustable rate mortgages. So here, this interest rate column, while you may start with an interest rate of 5%, let's say that after 2 months, that goes up to 6%. Okay, then you see it flows through in the sense of raising it at 6% from that point forward. But then maybe in the following month, it goes up, or following couple of months later, it goes up to 6.5%. Well, now it's interesting to sort of take note. Whoa, hold on here. I pushed the wrong button. Sorry about that. But under those circumstances, that's also going to have an impact over here on your effective cost of borrowing. So it's just another way that if you want to include a variable rate mortgage for this particular problem, you are able to, and then see what the resulting impact would be on your overall effective cost of borrowing. So it's just another thing that you can kind of do with this to kind of tinker around with it, but it in essence creates a full payment schedule for the loan, excuse me. And what you will take note of, I know I'm not expecting you to be Excel aficionados, but in month 36, where the loan is prepaid, this is where it's set up to sort of take and add in the payoff amount of the loan, any penalties, that sort of thing. And so that's what that number, that 729, represents here. And then the number over here is what that overall effective cost of borrowing would be for those conditions. Okay, so once again, this model is going to be sent to you along with the handout. So at this point, I am ready, I guess, to entertain any questions that you guys have, and we'll kind of go from there.
Amazing, amazing. All right, we have a question in the Q&A section. Is it legal for lenders to collect a fee in their escrow before a loan is approved?
I mean, what kind of a fee? I mean, that would be really the question, I guess, to really ask here, because in some cases, it may be they collect money for obviously having an appraisal done on the property, and would in some cases collect that, prior to the loan being approved. And if the loan is not approved, then you're still liable for that appraisal fee. So it really sort of depends on what kind of fee we're talking about. Okay. So where the numbers change at 36 months, why do the numbers continue on the spreadsheet as if you're still paying? That's just the way the spreadsheet is set up. In other words, you would just ignore everything after month 36. So just the only thing we would be concerned with would be that first 36 months. Everything from that point doesn't really matter. And what is the name of the department or school at NSU? This is part of the H. Wayne Huizenga College of Business and Entrepreneurship. And our program specifically is the Master of Science in Real Estate Development, MSRED. And if you actually go to nova.edu/real estate, it will pull up the website for the program.
Absolutely. And I just put those two links in the chat. It's linking for me, but it's not linking for you guys, but it's super simple. Like you said, www.nova.edu/real estate. They also have the /property management. Yes, I will be sending a thank you email out probably in the next 20 to 30 minutes with both of those documents attached for you guys. So yeah, we're getting more questions in.
All right.
Good job, guys.
Recommended letters? No, I'm not going to get into that. That would not be appropriate for me to promote any particular lender. But in terms of vetting, I mean, honestly, you really just have to shop around on your own. I mean, I'm sure that there probably is someone somewhere that has collected some information that they probably are willing to share with you at a cost for what the current prevailing loan conditions are with different lenders. But the reality is you pretty much just have to kind of make a few phone calls, and depending on the level on the market you're working in and the sophistication of the lenders, you're going to be able to make a quick phone call and just kind of say, hey, I'm looking to do $1 million project, 80% loan, or you just ask them, well, what sort of loan to value requirement do you have? What sort of debt service coverage ratio do you have? What are the, do you have any loan origination fees? Do you have any prepayment penalties? Do you have any administrative fees? And just kind of get those questions answered up front. It's a good checklist to kind of go through. Not that that's going to catch everything, because there are many other things lenders can do. I mean, a good one to point out is some lenders for commercial loans, they will require you on a regular basis, could be a monthly basis, could be a quarterly basis, could be an annual basis, to provide, in essence, audited or unaudited financial statements for the property, so that they can, in essence, kind of take a look at, okay, how is the property performing? Are lease rates going up? Are they going down? Or vacancies increasing or decreasing? And usually what happens, especially in larger properties, not so much, few $1 million properties, but when we start getting up into properties that are, tens of millions and potentially hundreds of millions of dollar, portfolio sort of properties, there the lender will pass along a lot of that property performance information that you provide to what they call their surveillance team. And that team will kind of go through and feed all of that information into their systems, and ultimately kind of spit out and say, hey, you take a look at this property a little bit more closely. They've had a significant decline in rental rates over the past couple of months. They've had a significant increase in operating expenses. And the reason they care about that, and the reason they require that, is that gives them kind of an early warning system from the lender's perspective if something potentially may be coming negatively to impact your ability to pay back the loan at some point in the future. So there's all kinds of, I mean, once again, every lender is different, and I can't stress that enough. And commercial real estate loans, for the most part, are kind of a buyer beware product relative to residential real estate loans that can be, in many cases, you have a lot of consumer protection devices built into those legally through regulatory requirements, that the disclosures and maximum sort of interest rates and all those sorts of things. And commercial loans, it's a very, very different game in terms of what lenders can do. Now, it's not to say that all lenders are problematic or greedy or anything like that. It's not what I'm trying to say, but they all have their different ways and different business models of how they go about making money. And so it's important for you to kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. All I guess I'm trying to articulate is, don't just look at that stated interest rate and assume that's all you need to know. You need to be able to dive a little bit deeper, because whenever you think about that, you could have an extra point, 2 points or more added to your effective cost of borrowing. That translates significantly into the money that you're going to get to keep from the property. You don't want to just kind of, I'm not going to worry about that, sort of attitude about these sorts of things. So definitely worth considering. Okay, moving on. We're talking about the degree program at NSU. Does it help with CCIM requirements? Yes, it does. We are one of a handful of universities across the country that participate in the CCIM Fast Track program for their designation. In essence, you get to waive out of 3 of the 4 required CCIM courses. And then as long as you've got the qualifying portfolio and you pass their comprehensive exam, then you can become a part of CCIM. Okay, next one. How does the true cost of the loan, should it relate to the market cap rate on that loan? Okay, maybe yes, maybe no. The cap rate on a loan, or it's not really a cap rate on the loan, it's cap rate on the property, is a reflection of the relative risk of that particular property to others that are in that particular market. So you could have a cap rate in South Florida that's very different than what it is in Tennessee or Texas. You can also have a very different cap rate depending on the property type, whether it's an apartment community, whether it's an office building, retail building, industrial property. But that cap rate is really meant to reflect what the sort of risk profile is for that property at that particular point in time whenever coming up with a market valuation. And so it will be taken into consideration whenever establishing the market value of the property, which then translates into what is the dollar amount that you can then get on the loan from the lender in terms of a loan to value. So it is, related in that respect. But just because the cap rate says that it's worth this or it's worth that, doesn't mean the lender or that particular lender is going to, rely on that. And this, it gets into a whole other, set of things with appraisers. You may shop around, and actually in most instances, you're going to be required to probably use an approved appraiser off of an approved list that you may not even get to choose who it is. The lender's going to choose them for you. And now what you may be able to do is that number that the appraiser comes up with, you believe it to be ridiculously low relative to what you think the market value of the property is. You usually can petition the lender to have another appraisal done, but once again, at your expense. And then they may use like a blended average of the two, and that's a whole other, point of, I guess, negotiation between you and the lender. But appraisals on commercial properties are not cheap. Compared to residential properties where, a residential property appraisal, could be $500 to $1,000, a couple $1,000 in some cases. For most commercial properties, probably the cheapest ones are going to be, a few $1,000s, and the more complicated, more exotic that your property may be, a larger, that appraisal could be potentially $30,000, $40,000. So it's not something that you take lightly in terms of just saying, oh, okay, let's have another appraisal done, unless you really think there was some sort of a significant error that was made in the appraisal. Okay. All right, any other questions?
Any other questions, guys? Before I announce, well, maybe think of a question or two. We have a couple minutes left, but I will go ahead and announce our raffle winner. Little drum roll. Congratulations, Abby F. Yay, you're winning the NSU swag bag and a gift card. I will be in touch with you, or you can call me, send me an email, but I will be emailing you anyway today, congratulating you on your prize. And we're just happy to everyone that entered in the raffle. Keep entering, you'll win at some point. So we always have a great giveaway. So
I
yeah.
think now, Casey, I think you're on to talk a little bit more about, I guess, the admissions and all that sort of thing about the program. And I'll go ahead and kind of sign off and give you the chance to kind of go over all of that. I appreciated being with everybody today, and hopefully it was beneficial for everybody. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Forgy. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dr. Forgy.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:15. I know everyone really wants their lunch period right now, but I promise you I will be as brief as possible. So once again, I'm going to reintroduce myself. Casey Seidman here, Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions for the Master of Science in Real Estate Development Program. So let me just briefly share my screen with everybody. Let me start here and briefly share my screen. All right. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, does everyone see my PowerPoint? Okay, perfect. So my PowerPoint is showing up. So going over that. So let me give you kind of a little bit of a background on us. So the H. Wayne Huizenga College of Business, where the real estate program is in, is Florida's largest graduate business college. And one of the cool things about us is that we have over 135 different corporate partners, including the Stiles Corporation, which is the big backer of our program, First Residential, Castle Group, City Furniture, Publix, Walgreens, Broward County, and many, many more. Now, something you notice about a lot of these partners here on the screen, they all have a very large real estate portfolio. So real estate is in our corporate partners' blood, and it's in our blood. And we'll make sure that whatever we work on this program, we're going to give you the skills in order to understand what you need to work with these corporate partners and also deal with real estate development. Now, the real MSRED program is 36 credits overall, and you can either complete it in 1 year or 2 years. But if you want to do it in 1 year, you must complete it in the fall semester. Now, so one thing also unique about this program is we focus on all aspects of real estate development. So we don't focus on just finance or construction or GIS. We focus on everything from finding the piece of dirt to building up that viable piece of land, piece of commercial property. So we focus on all aspects of it. Now, we are housed in the Terry W. Stiles School of Real Estate Development. So a little bit more on that. So the Terry Stiles, so back in 2013, when this program was founded, Terry Stiles, the founder of Stiles Corporation, was a very big supporter of our program. Up until the day of his untimely passing in 2017, he was a big supporter of our program. But after he unfortunately passed away, the local real estate development community, which mostly sits on our board, donated his money in his name. So you get the naming rights to call it the Terry Stiles School of Real Estate Development. That is the kind of confidence the real estate development community has in our program, that we can bear the name Terry W. Stiles. Quick overview of the faculty. So this is the faculty that teach in our program. We have Dr. Fred Forgy, who is our department chair, who also conducted our presentation today. Dr. Thomas Vertzer, who is actually a specialist in all of the real estate software like GIS, Argus, land use planning. Dr. Owazli, who focuses in sustainable community development. Jorge San Miguel. Adam Hanfigger, who's actually one of the best real estate lawyers in the state. And Gary Singer, who's also a real estate lawyer. Advisory board. If you take a look at this advisory board, you can see it's a who's who of the local real estate development community. So if there's a big name, it's on our board and it's right here, and they support our program. And one of them can be your mentor while you're in the program. Now, why us over other real estate development programs? Well, as I said before, we focus on the entire real estate development process, not just one aspect. when you typically look at a real estate development program, usually focus on finance, it focuses on architecture. We touch everything. We make sure that you will understand real estate development process from the beginning all the way to the end. Another thing, we train you on Argus and ArcGIS. So you're learning two of the core programs you need in order to understand cash flow and where to build. Another thing, site visits are integral part of our program. So it's not just that we're taking you into a classroom and we're just teaching you theory here. We are actually teaching you, we actually take you to the site so you can see what you're learning in the classroom, how it actually applies to what you're going to be doing in real estate developments. Fourth, our faculty are not just academics, they are practitioners as well. Now, to give you an example, is Dr. Forgy himself. He is actually a redeveloper himself and has 39 different properties he has redeveloped. So we're not just talking about this, we are doing it, and we are doing it big. Fifth, our alumni have gone on to work for organizations such as the Stiles Corporation, D.R. Horton, U.S. Department of State, Synovus Bank, and many others. So we have alumni all over the field in all aspects of real estate development. And as I alluded to before, we effectively have the endorsement of the local real estate development industry. So we have five start terms. Now, I would suggest everybody on this call, if you do want to start, please start in the fall term. It will make planning a lot easier and classes will run more sequentially. Sorry, my watch keeps going off. It keeps kind of, if you start in fall, you'll be able to get through in that 1 year and it'll be easier to plan. Now, our course runs in two formats. It's either online synchronous, meaning that you actually have to log on at the same time it's being offered, or it's on weekends here in person in the DeSantis building from Saturdays 8 to noon, 12:30 to 4:30. Admissions requirements. So no matter what, everybody on here, if you want interest in the program, you do have to apply. Now, normally it's a $50 application fee, but we are waiving your application fee, no questions asked. At a minimum, we will need your official bachelor degree transcripts. Now, if you have a 3.1 or higher, that is all we're going to need is those two items. If you have less than a 3.1 GPA, we are going to need the following. We're going to need a resume, 2 letters of recommendation, and a 500-word essay on explaining how the MSRD program will help you achieve your goals. And you can email all of those to me. So we're going to need that if your GPA is below a 3.1. Now, these prices are going to be changing a little bit, but right now the going rate for the fall term is going to be $10.23 a credit hour. However, as a member of BREIA, you do receive a 20% discount in our program. So if you are not a member of BREIA, I encourage you by the end of today's webinar to get yourself to join BREIA. The discount alone more than makes up for the cost of joining BREIA. So I encourage everybody on this call to join BREIA and get your 20% discount in this program. Now, we also have a very limited number of scholarships as well, but if you qualify for it, we have 2 Terry-style scholarship awards up to $25,000, which nearly covers the entire cost of tuition, which I encourage anybody who applies for this program to definitely apply for that scholarship. Financial aid. So almost a lot of people in your graduate programs typically use financial aid. So if they do, they should go to FAFSA.ed.gov and turn in their FAFSA. If they have any questions, they can reach out to the financial aid office at 954-262-3380. And then I want to open it up to questions from anybody, but the waiver code here is wrong, but let me change the waiver code on here to be correct. But if you want to apply today, we are waiving your application fee. So I like to open up to questions either in the Q&A or the chat if anybody's got a question about the program.
I do want to mention how long Anish has been connected with you guys and how much he stands for what you're doing over there. He hasn't seen any other call. He went to USF. I went to FAU, South Florida, born and raised. I haven't seen any other program that does what you guys are doing. And I have walked the campus many, many times, had many events there, and it's just an absolutely stunning place to be. I know you guys are going out and doing a lot of field stuff, but just being on that campus is lovely and a great experience. I know Anish has been on the campus. He'd say the same thing. So I put Casey's information in the chat. It's also on the screen. You might want to take a quick picture of that waiver code while it's up. This is an amazing opportunity. We're definitely in alignment with what they're doing. Christy, you're wondering if you can take like a la carte classes for this program? I don't
Yes,
see why not.
yeah, you can do that. You could take the classes piece by piece, but I would recommend if you do it piece by piece, you're not going to be financial aid eligible. So you'd have to pay out of pocket. My recommendation would be to take the entire program because it does work together very well. You can do it piece by piece. Like, for example, you could take GIS, or you could take the land use planning class, or you can take real estate law. I think it's better to take it all because it will make a lot more sense if you do it all together.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, if you guys have any more questions, please let us know. Yes, I'm sharing the files with everybody with the email that you use to register for this Zoom. I always send a thank you email after every webinar. You might just have to check your spam and junk folder because it's from my personal work email, alexa@bpmria. So everybody, I always send it out about an hour or less after the webinar is over. You'll be getting one today with 2 attachments on it. So definitely look out for an email from me, alexa@bpmria. With that information, I'll make sure I put Casey's information in there for you guys. If you do think of any questions, you'll know where to find him. And I just want to thank you so much for being here today, Casey. Thank you so much for everything, all the information, just, giving us this amazing offer. We're definitely really grateful.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, Anish, and thank you, BPM RIA, for having NSU's MSRD program here today. We love being here. We want to go to every BPM RIA event, and if you say be there, we'll be there.
I know. You guys have to come next in-person meeting in August. We need to get you over there. I know April's
Done
like
deal.
super busy, so we'll be in touch. Everybody, thank you so much. Another webinar tomorrow and Thursday. Keep your eyes open for all of these great events. And I hope everybody has a great Taco Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.